I remember Mama.
With Sophie Rosenstein.
Not quite.
And,
Old Truckline Cafe.
oh yeah, Truckline Cafe.
Old Hollywood is full of secrets, and so were its stars. Many of them kept their family histories hidden from the public. Some of these secrets were so disturbing and unimaginable, they were buried for decades. Today, we're going to unveil the hidden family stories that legendary actors tried to keep from the world. These revelations were found in biographies, banned books, and forgotten archives. It took us months to uncover them, so stay tuned and enjoy the journey. Raymond Burr's phantom wife and child to conceal his truth. As the star of TV's Perry Mason, actor Raymond Burr presented a suave, upstanding image. Widowed, according to studio lore, after a tragic young love. It turns out this backstory was pure fiction. In reality, Burr was gay and felt compelled to hide that fact in the 1950s, when homosexuality would derail a leading man's career.
Your husband pays me to run his plantation, not to be killed by the heat.
It's part of the job.
Rubber's going up in price every day. I can't get enough workmen. When I do, they run away to go into business for themselves.
So he and his publicity team concocted an elaborate personal history. Burr claimed he had once been married to a Scottish woman named Annette Sutherland, who died in a plane crash, and that he had a young son who died of leukemia. These were complete lies. Neither the wife nor son ever existed. Burr did marry once in the 1940s to actress Isabella Ward, but it was short-lived and childless. In later interviews, he would recite the tale of his deceased wife and child to deflect inquiries about why he was unmarried. Reporters who pressed too hard got the curt response, "I don't discuss that," and usually dropped the subject. Behind the scenes, Burr maintained a 35-year relationship with his male partner, Robert Benavides, discreetly living as a couple on their vineyard. Only a handful of close friends knew the truth. The press dutifully repeated Burr's fabricated tragedies throughout his run as a TV star, never realizing it was a smokescreen. It was not until after Burr's death in 1993 that his biography, Hiding in Plain Sight, revealed the full extent of his invented life. The public learned that the picture-perfect backstory of Raymond Burr's family was a studio-sanctioned illusion to protect an actor who, in that era, felt he had no choice but to mask his true self. It's a striking example of Hollywood's closet. Burr literally created phantom family members to fill the void where his truth could not be spoken. Mary Astor's Purple Diary airs her dirty laundry. In 1936, demure character actress Mary Astor found herself at the center of one of Hollywood's earliest sex scandals, one that revolved around her secret journal. Astor was embroiled in a bitter custody battle with her ex-husband, Dr. Franklin Thorpe, over their 4-year-old daughter. Thorpe stole Astor's private diary and threatened to use it in court to prove she was an unfit mother. The diary allegedly contained Astor's frank descriptions of her multiple love affairs, including an affair with playwright George S. Kaufman, noted in purple ink, earning it the moniker The Purple Diary in the press. When news of the diary's existence broke, it caused a sensation. In an America still reeling from the Depression, readers devoured the salacious details. Astor's image as a respectable actress was on the line. The studios feared ruin if all her sexual secrets spilled out. During the trial, crowds packed the courtroom, and newspaper vendors outside hawked hot dogs and popcorn like it was a sporting event.
I'm sorry, Don. I couldn't help it.
What did you mean by telling that woman that Peggy and her mother were coming down here?
But, Don, I had to.
You did not?
Yes, I did.
Astor's personal life was laid bare in testimony. It was arguably Hollywood's first big custody scandal, and certainly its first major leaked diary. Astor, however, refused to be shamed. She took the stand and calmly explained that yes, she had loved other men during her unhappy marriage, but that didn't make her a bad mother. In a savvy PR move, her lawyer got the judge to seal and later burn the most explicit pages of the diary, and much of its contents never became public.
Am I to blame for last night?
Well, you warned us that Thursby was dangerous. Of course, you lied to us about your sister and all that, but that didn't count. We didn't believe you. No, I wouldn't say that you were at fault.
Astor won custody of her daughter in the end. Though the scandal briefly threatened her career, she went on to win an Oscar a few years later. Still, the legend of Mary Astor's Diary lives on as an example of a star's intimate secrets nearly derailing her. It was said to be the scandal that knocked Hitler off the front page. The trial also foreshadowed modern celebrity scandals, proving that even in 1936, audiences had an appetite for the private indiscretions of the stars. Patty Duke's Son, a paternity puzzle finally solved.
And isn't 65 flunking?
Oui. But French is a moth-eaten drag. I mean, it'd be different if I were going to marry some Frenchman and have to speak French. But I'll probably make the big splash with Richard someday.
In the 1960s, Oscar-winning actress Patty Duke found herself in a predicament that old Hollywood knew all too well. An unplanned pregnancy with uncertain paternity and enormous pressure to keep things quiet. In 1970, at age 23, Duke gave birth to a son, Sean. At the time, she was married to actor Michael Tell, but that was a quickie marriage of just 13 days, largely to quell gossip. She had also been romantically involved with teen idol Daisy Arnaz Jr. and actor John Aston around the same time. The situation was a publicist's nightmare. The press wildly speculated who the father was, while Duke herself wasn't entirely sure. To avoid a scandal, she impulsively married Michael Tell, a virtual stranger during the pregnancy, then annulled it, later claiming the baby was John Aston's. Aston and Duke kept their affair clandestine until after Sean's birth, after which Aston divorced and married Patty Duke, jointly raising Sean. For years, Sean Aston believed John Aston was his biological dad. However, when Sean was a teenager, Patty Duke confessed that actually Daisy Arnaz Jr. was his father, a revelation that understandably threw the young Sean for a loop. In the 1990s, a then-adult Sean Aston sought the truth once and for all. He underwent DNA testing with all three potential fathers, John Aston, Daisy Arnaz Jr., and the long-forgotten Michael Tell. The result shocked everyone. Sean's biological father was Michael Tell, the man Duke had married on a whim. This outcome was ironic, given Tell, and Duke never consummated their brief marriage. It's believed Sean was actually conceived earlier, but genetic testing proved Tell was the father nonetheless. Patty Duke was floored by the result, but Sean embraced having clarity. He also made the wise choice to define fatherhood beyond biology, maintaining loving relationships with John Aston and Desi Jr., as well as getting to know Tell. This decades-long secret was one of Hollywood's more convoluted paternity cover-ups. At the time, to protect Duke's clean-cut image, the subterfuge was deemed necessary. The truth only fully emerged many years later, showing that even in more modern Hollywood, stars and studios still scrambled to hide messy family situations, often at the expense of the child who was kept in the dark, the secret love child of Clark Gable and Loretta Young. In 1935, devout Catholic actress Loretta Young found herself pregnant after an affair with Clark Gable, the married king of Hollywood.
You could have skipped that. You're only making it tougher on everybody.
Oh, put your arms around me.
During filming of Call of the Wild. Fearing ruin in an era when unwed motherhood could end a career, Young staged an elaborate cover-up. She disappeared from Hollywood, gave birth in secret, and months later, adopted a baby girl named Judy. For years, Judy was presented as Young's adopted daughter. Even Judy herself didn't know her true parentage. Young never told Gable about the pregnancy, and Gable never acknowledged the child. Judy grew up noticing her resemblance to Gable, but when she questioned Loretta, her mother indignantly dismissed the rumors. The painful truth finally emerged publicly in 1958, when a tabloid hinted at Judy's parentage, and fully in 1994 with Judy Lewis's memoir, Uncommon Knowledge. Lewis wrote of confronting Loretta in 1966, unleashing all the years of hurt and abandonment. Only in her 80s did Loretta Young quietly admit Judy was her biological child. This once grievous secret reveals the extreme lengths Golden Age stars went to in order to protect their wholesome images. Charlie Chaplin's underage bride and hidden pregnancy. Silent film legend. Charlie Chaplin became embroiled in scandal in 1924 when 16-year-old actress Lita Grey, originally cast in his film The Gold Rush, became pregnant with his child. At 35, Chaplin faced possible charges under California's strict laws against sex with a minor, so he hastily arranged a secret marriage in Mexico to avoid legal trouble. The wedding was kept quiet and low profile, as Chaplin's studio feared public outrage. Chaplin had allegedly even pressured Lita to undergo an illegal abortion to prevent the birth, according to her later divorce filings. Ultimately, Lita gave birth to 2 sons in quick succession, and the marriage rapidly deteriorated amid Chaplin's serial infidelity and neglect. When Lita Grey Chaplin filed for divorce in 1927, the proceedings exposed lurid details from her 50-page complaint, including allegations of Chaplin's perversity, making front-page news and titillating the public. A judge ordered Chaplin to pay one of the largest divorce settlements in history at the time. The scandal could have destroyed Chaplin's career, but he survived it, unlike his next paternity scandal in the 1940s. Still, for decades, the full truth of Chaplin's secret teenage wife and the pregnancy he tried to cover up was downplayed in official studio biographies. It remains one of old Hollywood's most shocking family secrets, showing even comedy kings had dark personal dramas behind the scenes. Judy Garland's father and the family's flight from scandal. Judy Garland, beloved as the innocent Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, grew up with a secret family shame. Her father, Frank Gumm, was a small-town theater manager with a predilection that was dangerous in the 1920s. He was rumored to have sexual encounters with young men, including teenage boys. In Garland's hometown of Grand Rapids, Minnesota, whispers grew that Frank's relationships with local male youths had crossed the line. In 1926, when Judy was just 4, a scandal prompted the family to suddenly flee Grand Rapids. The rumors and scandals got to be, Judy's daughter Lorna Luft later wrote, before the Gums hastily relocated to California. There, they hoped for a fresh start, far from the gossip. Young Judy was told not to mention the true reason for their move. The secret clouded her childhood. Her parents' marriage was turbulent, marked by separations and reconciliations that the little girl couldn't understand. Though it's impossible to verify the extent of Frank Gumm's misdeeds, Judy herself later acknowledged that her family had to leave town because of her father's behavior with young men. The irony is stark. While audiences saw a wholesome fantasy on screen, off-screen Judy Garland's early life was shaped by a family secret involving alleged sexual scandal. This painful background, kept quiet in publicity materials, contributed to the insecurity and longing for stability that Judy felt all her life. Merle Oberon's hidden heritage and fake identity. During Hollywood's golden age, mixed-race ancestry was considered a career killer for a leading lady. Actress Merle Oberon, renowned for her beauty in films like Wuthering Heights, went to extraordinary lengths to hide her true origins. Oberon claimed to be a white Australian born in Tasmania, a fabricated backstory invented by the studio to mask her biracial heritage. In reality, she was born in 1911 in Bombay, India, to a mother of South Asian descent and a British father. Even more scandalous, Merle's mother was only 12 years old at the time of Merle's birth, the result of her mother's rape by Merle's British grandfather. To dodge the stigma of illegitimacy and colonial racism, Merle was raised believing her grandmother was her mother and that her mother was her older sister. When Merle moved to England and later Hollywood to pursue stardom, she and her first husband concocted the fiction that she was from hobnobbing Tasmanian gentry. The secret of her mixed-race parentage was so guarded that Oberon avoided close-ups and strong lighting later in life to conceal her darker complexion and pockmarked skin. She even kept her own husband and children in the dark. Not until after Oberon's death in 1979 did researchers uncover her birth certificate in Indian archives, confirming the long-suspected truth. Merle Oberon's carefully crafted persona stands as a dramatic example of Hollywood's obsession with image. It was a lie lived so completely that it wasn't exposed until decades after the curtain fell. Gloria Grahame's scandalous affair with her teenage stepson. Oscar-winning actress Gloria Grahame had a sultry on-screen persona, but her most scandalous affair unfolded off-screen and was kept tightly under wraps. In the mid-1950s, Grahame's marriage to director Nicholas Ray imploded in spectacular fashion when Ray came home early one day in 1951 and allegedly found Gloria in bed with his 13-year-old son, Tony. Ray was horrified to catch his wife in a compromising situation with her own stepson. He swiftly separated from Grahame, but the true reason was kept secret from the public for over a decade. Grahame and Nicholas Ray divorced in 1952 very quietly. Astonishingly, Gloria Grahame continued the relationship with Tony Ray after he grew up. She married other men in the interim, but once Tony was of age, they reunited and married each other in 1960 in a secret ceremony in Tijuana, Mexico. By then, Tony was 23 and Gloria 37, former stepson and stepmother legally wed. This highly unorthodox marriage was revealed in 1962 during a child custody fight between Grahame and another ex-husband. When the press got wind that Grahame's fourth husband was her former stepson, Hollywood was genuinely shocked. The studios had managed to keep Grahame's taboo affair out of the gossip columns throughout the 1950s, but once it became public, her reputation never recovered. She found herself largely blacklisted over the scandal. It's a story almost too outrageous for fiction. A glamorous starlet carrying on with, and later marrying, the boy who used to call her Mom. Gloria Grahame's hidden affair remains one of Hollywood's most jaw-dropping family secrets. Bing Crosby, wholesome father figure with an abusive streak. On camera, Bing Crosby was the genial embodiment of fatherhood in movies like Going My Way. Off camera, however, Crosby's home life was deeply troubled, a fact long kept from the public. In 1983, 6 years after Bing's death, his eldest son, Gary Crosby, published a memoir, Going My Own Way, that exposed years of emotional and physical abuse the crooner inflicted on his 4 sons from his first marriage. According to Gary, Bing was an aloof, disciplinarian father who delivered brutal whippings with a belt, sometimes until he drew blood. He enforced harsh rules about diet and behavior, and if the boys deviated, they paid dearly. The picture Gary painted was startlingly at odds with Bing's kindly public persona. 2 of Gary's brothers corroborated some of the abuse claims, though one brother, Philip, disputed them as exaggerated. Gary wrote that their childhood was devoid of normal affection. Their famous father was cold, controlling, and quick to anger. Crosby's second family insisted he was a loving dad to them, highlighting how carefully this secret was managed. Crosby in his later years publicly played the role of doting patriarch, while the trauma of his first set of children was kept out of sight. At the time of Gary's revelations, many fans refused to believe Der Bingle could be so cruel. But over the years, additional accounts have supported Gary's story. The image of America's Christmas crooner was forever tarnished. Today, Bing Crosby's legacy carries an asterisk. Behind the cheery sing-alongs was a family in pain, suffering abuse that was swept under the rug until long after the spotlight dimmed. Joan Crawford's children, Mommy Dearest, and secret adoption drama. Few Hollywood secrets exploded as publicly as the hidden private life of Joan Crawford, one of the biggest stars of the 1930s and 40s. On screen, Crawford often played strong-willed women. At home, she was a fiercely private mother of 4 adopted children. Only after her death did the shocking truth of her parenting emerge. In 1978, her eldest daughter, Christina, published Mommy Dearest, alleging that Joan Crawford was an alcoholic and abusive adoptive mother who subjected Christina and her brother Christopher to nightly beatings, degrading punishments, and psychological torment. Christina recounted being slapped, whipped with hangers, and even choked in a rage by Crawford, a far cry from the loving mother Joan portrayed in publicity photos. The book painted Crawford as a narcissist, more in love with her fame than her kids, calling her the real Wicked Witch of the West. Joan's two younger twins denied the abuse, but Christina's memoir became a cause célèbre and was made into a Hollywood film. It turned "no wire hangers" into a notorious catchphrase attributed to Crawford's tirades. Beyond the abuse claims, Crawford's adoption history had its own dark secrets. She adopted 5 children in total, and it later came out that her youngest 2 were obtained through the Tennessee Children's Home Society, an infamous baby trafficking ring run by Georgia Tann. Crawford likely did not know of the illicit practices, but the circumstances of her acquiring those babies were murky. Joan kept tight control over her image as a devoted mother, even as behind closed doors, her family life was crumbling. The publication of Mommy Dearest blew the lid off that carefully managed image. The world was stunned to learn that the grande dame of MGM was allegedly a terror at home, wielding abuse and cruelty where she showed smiles on camera. Whether entirely true or somewhat exaggerated, the legend of Joan Crawford's monstrous motherhood endures as one of Hollywood's darkest family secrets, one the star took to her grave, and which her daughter exposed with a vengeance. Rita Hayworth's childhood trauma, concealed by Hollywood glamour. With her shimmering beauty and iconic dance routines, Rita Hayworth was the 1940s ultimate bombshell, dubbed the Love Goddess. But Hayworth's sultry smile masked a horrifying family secret. From a young age, she was sexually abused by her own father. Eduardo Cancino was a Spanish-born dancer who made his young daughter his partner in a family dance act. On their touring circuit, Eduardo raped Rita repeatedly during her early adolescence, a fact she confided years later to her third husband, Orson Welles. Her biographer confirms that Rita's mother, Volga, knew something was wrong. She even slept in the same bed as teenaged Rita when she could, trying to protect her. But the abuse continued in secret. In the patriarchal, image-conscious studio system, such a scandal would have ended Rita's career before it began, so it remained completely hidden from the public. Hayworth herself once lamented, "I didn't have childhood," a subtle reference to the innocence stolen from her. The psychological scars manifested in her tumultuous love life. 5 broken marriages, including to Welles and Prince Ali Khan, and a pattern of choosing controlling or abusive men. Welles later said the abuse cut her soul and twisted her. She could never find lasting happiness. In the 1940s, Rita Hayworth's shocking origin story was known only to a few. She buried it under a new identity and a vivacious on-screen persona. Not until decades later did the full truth of her childhood emerge in biographies. The ultimate sex symbol had been a victim of incest and pedophilic abuse. It is a testament to Hollywood's power to manufacture illusion that someone enduring such trauma could appear so tantalizingly carefree on film. Her dark family secret thoroughly concealed behind the studio's silver sparkle. Spencer Tracy's double life and guilt-ridden family secret. On the surface, actor Spencer Tracy was a Hollywood success story. 2 Oscars, a devout Catholic family man, and later a famous long-term romance with Katharine Hepburn. But Tracy's private life was marked by profound guilt and a secret domestic arrangement that defied the public image of the era. In 1924, Tracy's first child, John Tracy, was born deaf. Spencer, an Irish-American Catholic, was devastated by his son's disability and irrationally blamed it on his own sins. He saw John's deafness as punishment and carried lifelong guilt over it. Tracy and his wife Louise founded a groundbreaking clinic for hearing-impaired children, but Spencer could never fully forgive himself. This guilt compounded Tracy's alcoholism and depression, tormenting him in private, even as he maintained a stoic front on set. Meanwhile, as his career soared in the 1940s, Tracy entered a passionate relationship with co-star Katharine Hepburn. For 25 years, they were devoted companions, yet they never married. Why? Because Tracy, a strict Catholic, refused to divorce his wife Louise, despite their estrangement. Instead, he led a double life, living separately from his wife and children, spending much of his time with Hepburn, all while remaining officially married to Louise until his dying day. This open secret was well known in Hollywood circles, but the public was kept in the dark. Fan magazines continued to depict Tracy as a family man, and Hepburn as just a close friend. Tracy's family situation was effectively whitewashed to preserve his reputation and avoid offending sensibilities. Only after Tracy's death in 1967 did Hepburn speak openly about their love. Spencer Tracy's story illustrates a clash between personal happiness and public image. A man haunted by guilt over his child and bound by religious conviction, even as he found comfort in a relationship that had to remain a Hollywood secret for decades. Rock Hudson's closeted marriage and secret sexuality. To 1950s moviegoers, Rock Hudson was the epitome of the straight, romantic leading man, dashing, eligible, and ardently pursuing Doris Day on screen. In reality, Hudson was a closeted gay man, forced by the studio system to live a lie to protect his superstar image. His sexual orientation was an open secret in Hollywood, but wholly hidden from the public. The studios went to great lengths to keep it that way. In 1955, Hudson's agent famously arranged a marriage between Rock and the agent's own secretary, Phyllis Gates, to quash rumors and stave off Confidential magazine's threatened exposé. This sham marriage lasted only 3 years and was quietly dissolved once the gossip danger passed. Privately, Hudson indulged in the freedom of his true life, hosting legendary all-male pool parties described as blonde bacchanalias. But he always maintained a bachelor persona in fan magazines. The secret held until the 1980s. In 1985, Hudson's battle with AIDS became public when he was gravely ill, effectively outing him to the world. The revelation that this matinee idol was gay marked a turning point in cultural perceptions. Hudson's death later that year was front-page news and prompted massive discussion about AIDS and the hidden lives of gay actors. But during his prime, every trace of his real love life was suppressed. The studio system's strict morality codes and post-war ideals demanded Hudson play the role of heterosexual heartthrob off-screen as well as on. Close friends like Elizabeth Taylor kept his confidence, and the press, out of either complicity or fear of libel, kept his secret until literally his dying months. Rock Hudson's story is emblematic of an era when Hollywood manufactured not just on-screen stories, but off-screen personal lives. His double life, complete with a studio-arranged marriage as a prop, remained one of Hollywood's most poignant secrets until it could be hidden no more. Jack Nicholson's sister was really his mother. In 1974, a jaw-dropping secret about actor Jack Nicholson came to light.
My doctor, a shrink that I used to go to all the time, he says that in 50 or 60% of the cases, a pill really helps.
One even Jack himself hadn't known for 37 years. That year, Time magazine researchers preparing a cover story on Nicholson uncovered that the woman Jack thought was his older sister June was, in fact, his biological mother, and the woman who raised him was actually his grandmother. Back in 1936, 18-year-old June Nicholson had become pregnant out of wedlock. In the Nicholsons' conservative Catholic family from New Jersey, this was a dire predicament. June's mother, Ethel May, concocted a cover story. She would raise baby Jack as her own son, and June would be told of Jack's sister. Thus, Jack grew up believing his grandmother was his mom, and that June, who was often absent pursuing a career as a showgirl, was just his cool older sister. The family took this secret to extraordinary lengths. Even other relatives were kept in the dark or sworn to silence. It worked for decades. Nicholson had no clue. Both Ethel and June had passed away by the time Time magazine stumbled upon Jack's birth records. When a reporter informed him of the truth, Nicholson's response was shock, but also bemusement. It's a pretty dramatic event, but it wasn't what I'd call traumatizing. I was pretty well psychologically formed. Indeed, in a darkly comic twist, Nicholson remarked it was a prime candidate for a soap opera plot. The story made headlines, but Jack handled it with zen-like calm. Still, the revelation rewrote his life story. The women he thought were his mother and sister had reversed roles for his entire childhood to avoid scandal. Nicholson's case is often cited as one of Hollywood's strangest family secrets, and it wasn't even orchestrated by a studio, but by his own flesh and blood. It shows how deeply the stigma of illegitimacy ran in mid-century America, that even a movie star's identity could be built on such a lie. Bobby Darin, raised by his grandmother, thinking she was mom. The teen idol who sang Splish Splash and Mac the Knife had a personal history worthy of a melodrama. Bobby Darin grew up in a working-class Bronx family, doted on by his mother Polly and older sister Nina. Not until Darin was 31 years old did he discover the truth. Polly was actually his grandmother, and Nina was in fact his biological mother. Nina had become pregnant at 18, out of wedlock, and in the 1930s New York, the shame could have been ruinous. So the family devised a cover-up identical to the Nicholson family's. They decided the baby would be raised as Nina's younger brother, and Polly stepped in to act as mother. Bobby's putative father was said to be Polly's late husband. This secret was so tightly kept that Darin went through his entire meteoric rise to fame, oblivious to his true parentage. In the late 1960s, a relative finally spilled the secret to Bobby, shattering his sense of identity. Darin confronted Nina and Polly, who confirmed the story.
Back to Atlantic City. We open tomorrow.
At the Steel Pier?
The Steel Pier. 6 shows a day for 7 days. Good night.
42 shows, you're about to...
By then, Darin's beloved mom Polly was elderly and in poor health, and Nina had been more like a cool aunt figure all his life. The revelation took a toll on Bobby. Friends say he was never the same after learning who his mother really was. He became reclusive for a time, and it added to the stress on his weak heart. He died at just 37, taking the secret with him publicly. The full story became widely known through posthumous biographies. Bobby Darin's case, much like Nicholson's, underscores how generational shame led to family role reversals. The women in Darin's family kept the secret out of love and fear, never imagining their golden boy would become a superstar, Jerry Lewis's forgotten daughter and disowned son. Comedy legend. Jerry Lewis was famous for his zany on-screen antics, but his private family life contained turmoil and secrets he worked hard to suppress. Perhaps the most heartbreaking is the story of Susan Minaret, Jerry's illegitimate daughter, born in the early 1950s after an affair with model Lynn Dixon. Lewis, married at the time, never acknowledged Susan as his own. In fact, Susan grew up only hearing whispers that her father might be Jerry Lewis. For decades, Jerry stonewalled her and refused to take a paternity test. Susan, who eerily resembles Jerry, ended up homeless on the streets of Philadelphia by her 60s, still claiming to be Jerry Lewis's daughter without any support. Friends urged Jerry to help the woman, but he coldly ignored her plight. Even when a DNA test eventually indicated Jerry was likely her father, he offered no comment. This cruel neglect remained largely out of public view until after Lewis's death in 2017, when media covered Susan's situation and the tragic irony of a man who raised funds for Jerry's kids, yet abandoned one of his own. Another secret Lewis kept was his disowned adopted son, Ronald. In 1949, Jerry and first wife Patty adopted baby Ronnie, but after the couple had 6 biological sons, Ronnie's presence became complicated. By early adulthood, Ronald had cut ties with the family. So complete was the estrangement that in interviews Jerry would claim he had 5 sons, pointedly omitting Ronnie, as if he never existed. His own longtime publicist professed ignorance that Jerry even had an adopted son. It was later said Ronald changed his name and disowned the Lewis family. But some insiders suggest Jerry pushed him out. When Lewis died, his will pointedly left all 6 of his sons nothing and made no mention of Susan. The comedian who made the world laugh was, behind the scenes, a man who could be astonishingly cold to his own flesh and blood. These family secrets only dribbled out in news reports and biographies over the years, as Lewis himself steadfastly refused to comment, maintaining the carefree image of the nutty professor to the end. Marlon Brando's Hidden Brood and Family Tragedies. Marlon Brando, Hollywood's ultimate rebel, had a personal life as dramatic as any movie script, and he kept many aspects of it secret.
What were the shows that you've done in New York? Name 1 or 2 for me.
I was in Canada with Catherine Cornell.
Yes.
And I was in Eagle Rampant with Tallulah Bankhead.
Yes.
Brando's romantic adventures were legendary, spanning numerous wives, mistresses, and one-night stands across the globe. This resulted in a large number of children, at least 11 acknowledged, and several rumored beyond that. He officially had 3 children with his first 2 wives, 3 more with his Tahitian wife, Rita, and 3 with his longtime Guatemalan housekeeper. Plus, he adopted a few. But during Brando's life, the public was scarcely aware of most of them. For instance, in the late 1980s, it quietly emerged that his housekeeper, Maria Cristina, had borne him 3 kids, a fact Brando never trumpeted. He seemed to want those children kept out of the limelight. Even some of his older children were largely hidden from press coverage. Brando's island of misfit family members only really came to public attention through sensational tragedy. In 1990, Brando's son Christian shot and killed the abusive boyfriend of Brando's daughter Cheyenne in the actor's own home. The ensuing highly publicized trial revealed an utterly broken family. Christian claimed years of neglect, and Cheyenne, spiraling with mental illness, later died by suicide in 1995. Brando was shattered. These events forced into the open what Brando had managed to keep mostly private. His family was in chaos. Years earlier, Brando's promiscuity had already led to at least 1 secret child he never met. In 1954, an English actress had Brando's baby and placed him for adoption, a story that only emerged decades later. Marlon Brando's life was a paradox, a champion of truth and naturalism in acting. He was deeply evasive and protective when it came to his family. He cloistered his children on his private Pacific island and behind the high walls of his Mulholland Drive estate. But ultimately, the darkness within his family became headline news, forcing Brando to confront the consequences of a lifetime of personal excess and secrecy. It's a Shakespearean saga that underscores how even Hollywood's mightiest icon could not fully script or contain the tragedies of his own household. Ingrid Bergman's Exile for Love, a fair and illegitimate child. Today, the name Ingrid Bergman is synonymous with grace and talent. But in 1950, Bergman became the center of a moral firestorm that nearly ended her career.
Why should I be afraid?
Oh, I don't know. I just thought.
Well, I ain't afraid of nobody.
But you ain't been out for ever so long, have you?
The Swedish-born star had enjoyed a spotless reputation until she left her husband and young daughter in 1949 to work with Italian director Roberto Rossellini. Bergman and Rossellini fell passionately in love while making Stromboli, and she became pregnant with his child before any divorce or marriage. The scandal of this illicit affair and out-of-wedlock pregnancy sent conservative America into a frenzy. Remember, this was an era when Hollywood actresses were expected to uphold family values. The backlash was swift and merciless. Bergman was denounced on the floor of the U.S. Senate as an instrument of evil by an enraged senator. The media dubbed it Scandale Italiano. Fan mail turned to hate mail, labeling her a home-wrecking adulteress, unfit to be on screen. Churches boycotted her films. She was even banned from The Ed Sullivan Show for a time. Essentially, Bergman was exiled from Hollywood. She remained in Europe, married Rossellini, and gave birth to their son Renato and later twin daughters. For 7 years, Bergman did not set foot in Hollywood, a stunning ostracism for an actress of her stature, all because she followed her heart. By 1956, sentiment had softened, and she won an Oscar for Anastasia, signaling her redemption. When she finally returned to Hollywood to present at the Oscars in 1959, the scandal had faded. But for much of the 1950s, Ingrid Bergman's personal life was a dark secret in prudish American eyes, one that forced her into artistic exile. Her case even helped mellow American attitudes toward private lives of stars. The outrage was so extreme that many later viewed it as hypocritical. Bergman herself called the experience absolute hell. In the end, she triumphed, but the child born of her affair bore the brunt of being introduced to the world amid scandal. Lon Chaney Sr.'s silent heartache, hiding his parents' deafness. Lon Chaney Sr., the legendary man of 1,000 faces of silent horror films, carried a poignant family secret that shaped his mastery of pantomime. Both of Chaney's parents were deaf, and from childhood, Lon became fluent in sign language and nonverbal expression to communicate. This was not something he advertised in Hollywood. In fact, Chaney kept his parents' deafness hidden, even from his first wife Cleva for a time. In the early 1900s, disabilities carried stigma, and Chaney perhaps feared that knowledge of his family background would invite ridicule or pity. According to biographers, Cleva only discovered the truth when she met Chaney's parents over a holiday. Lon had not prepared her, and she was taken aback to learn her in-laws could neither hear nor speak. Cleva reacted poorly, reportedly screaming that she didn't want to risk having a dumb thing. This deepened a rift in their marriage. The tension culminated in 1913 with a dramatic incident. Cleva, emotionally distraught, walked onto the stage of a theater, where Lon was performing, and attempted suicide by drinking a vial of mercury chloride in front of the audience. She survived, but her actions scandalized the community, effectively ending Chaney's vaudeville job and their marriage. Lon Chaney was left a single father to their young son. He relocated and reinvented himself in Hollywood, but the trauma lingered. Chaney rarely gave interviews, and when he did, he omitted personal details, likely a reaction to how his family's secret of deafness had contributed to personal tragedy. Interestingly, Chaney's upbringing is also credited for his exceptional ability to convey emotion without words on film. The silent film medium was a perfect match for skills he learned as a child of deaf adults. This bittersweet secret was something Chaney kept quiet, even as it gave him the tools to become an icon of the silent era. It only became widely known long after his death, when film historians highlighted it as central to understanding the man of 1,000 faces. Vivien Leigh's battle with bipolar disorder behind the scenes. To audiences, Vivien Leigh was the picture of poise. Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind, and Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire.
How did you ever get out of jail? Why didn't they hang you?
Oh, that. Not much trouble. There's nothing much that money won't buy. I observe has even bought you the Honorable Mr. Wilkes.
But privately, Leigh fought a debilitating mental illness that was carefully kept out of the public eye. Leigh suffered from bipolar disorder, then often called manic depression, throughout her adult life. In the 1940s and 50s, mental illness was heavily stigmatized. Studios feared an unstable star would be unbankable if word got out. So Leigh's condition remained a closely guarded secret, managed quietly by her inner circle and doctors. She would have severe mood swings, euphoric highs where she'd barely sleep, and engage in reckless sexual encounters, followed by crushing depressions marked by exhaustion and breakdowns. Her husband, actor Laurence Olivier, and others witnessed frightening episodes. Once, during a stage performance in 1953, Leigh had a manic break and began screaming obscenities at Olivier in front of the crew. Then, moments later, acted as if nothing had happened.
I can't go until this misunderstanding is cleared up.
You're not going to cheat Miss Mellie out of the satisfaction of publicly ordering you out of her house.
There was nothing wrong. India hates me, so I can't go, Red. I couldn't face it.
On the set of Elephant Walk, 1953, she suffered a breakdown and was replaced in the film. At times, she was taken to psychiatric clinics for electroshock therapy, the primitive treatment of the era. But to the press, the official statements were that she was exhausted or had a nervous strain. Friends later noted that Vivien and Larry Olivier developed coded ways to signal if she was near the edge. In public, Leigh tried to maintain her glamorous image, but those close to her saw the cracks. The impulsivity, the insomnia, the mood flips that left even Leigh terrified of herself. Still, this was never discussed openly while she was alive. Only in memoirs and biographies years after her death in 1967 did the full extent of her mental illness come out, showing how remarkable it was that she delivered such controlled, iconic performances while privately living in turmoil. At the time, Leigh's struggles were explained away as fainting spells or hidden entirely. Hollywood protected one of its biggest stars, and she, too, was desperate to keep her condition secret, once telling an interviewer she had been quite sane all my life. The truth was far more complicated, and tragically, Leigh's bipolar disorder worsened with age, contributing to the breakdown of her marriage and affecting her health. Her life story, only fully pieced together later, is one of heroic public strength masking private pain, a secret battle with mental illness in an era ill-equipped to understand it. Gene Tierney's disabled daughter and heartbreaking sacrifice. 1940s screen siren. Gene Tierney experienced a personal tragedy that she and the Hollywood studios strove to keep out of the limelight.
Thank you. But I can't possibly become a patient of yours.
You are already. The fact that I know of your kleptomania, the fact that I know that your mind is sick and...
In 1943, at the height of Tierney's career, she gave birth to a daughter, Daria, who was profoundly disabled, deaf, nearly blind, and severely developmentally impaired. The cause was a cruel twist of fate. When Tierney was pregnant, a fan breached a quarantine to meet her, infecting Tierney with rubella at exactly the wrong moment in her pregnancy. The disease passed to baby Daria, causing irreparable damage. Tierney was devastated and racked with guilt. In an era with limited support for special needs children, Daria needed constant medical care. Tierney and her husband, designer Oleg Cassini, made the agonizing decision to institutionalize Daria as a young child in order to give her a stable environment and treatment that Tierney could not provide while working. This fact was kept intensely private. Tierney feared the public knowing might invite cruel gossip that Daria's condition was somehow hereditary or her fault. Outwardly, Tierney carried on her career appearing in films, though inside she was suffering from severe postpartum depression and guilt. By the early 1950s, Gene Tierney's mental health deteriorated. She was hospitalized for depression and underwent shock therapy. Friends noted that the trauma of Daria's situation haunted her. Yet Tierney rarely spoke of Daria in public, and press coverage in the 1940s made only vague references to her taking time off for maternity. The full story wasn't widely known until Tierney published her memoir, Self-Portrait, in 1979, openly discussing Daria. She wrote movingly about visiting her daughter in the institution over the years. Hollywood contemporaries were aware, but the public largely wasn't. In 1957, an Agatha Christie mystery was even inspired by Tierney's rubella tragedy, but few connected it to her then. Tierney's graceful image never betrayed the pain of a mother who had to give up her child for the child's well-being. It's a somber secret that shows a different side of Hollywood's golden age. Beyond the bright lights, there were stars privately enduring heartbreaks that no amount of fame could remedy. Clara Bow, America's It Girl, survived family horror. Clara Bow, the original It Girl of the 1920s, seemed to personify the jazz age flapper. Vivacious, carefree, and sexy.
Oh, yes. She's here with Jack Carter.
Mother.
Mother?
I was just thinking.
But buried in her past was a nightmare childhood that the studios worked hard to conceal, lest it tarnish her vivacious image. Bow grew up in extreme poverty in Brooklyn, the unwanted only surviving child of a mentally ill mother and a physically abusive, possibly intellectually disabled father. The family's hardships were an open secret around their tenement, but Hollywood knew nothing of it when Bow's star rose. At the peak of her fame, few could imagine that off-screen this glamorous star had endured her mother trying to kill her and her father raping her. Yet, according to Bow's biographer David Sten, and Bow's own later accounts, that's exactly what happened. Her mother, Sarah Bow, suffered from psychosis and epilepsy. When Clara was a teenager on the verge of success, Sarah one night held a butcher knife to Clara's throat, saying, "I'm going to kill you, Clara, because if I can't have you, no one will." Clara managed to fend her off and lock her up until help arrived, but the incident left deep scars. Not long after, her mother was institutionalized and died. Around the same time, Bow's father sexually assaulted her. Clara fled to Hollywood, determined to bury these traumas. The studio publicity machine spun a tale of a happy Brooklyn tomboy discovered in a magazine contest, omitting any hint of madness or abuse. Bow herself rarely spoke of her past, though she did once allude that her father did two things no father should do to his daughter, a likely reference to incest. Throughout her career, she experienced breakdowns and erratic behavior that, in hindsight, can be traced to untreated PTSD from her youth. Yet, at the time, gossip columnists instead painted her as an uneducated, dumb party girl when she stumbled. Clara's horrific family secret remained largely unknown until biographical research in the 1970s and 80s unearthed the truth. It recast Clara Bow's legacy. Far from a carefree flapper, she was a survivor of violence and mental illness, who against all odds became the symbol of an era. The fact that she managed to charm audiences while carrying that burden speaks volumes about Hollywood's capacity for both myth-making and neglect of a star's well-being. Barbara Stanwyck's adopted son, a family fracture under wraps. Tough as nails on screen and fiercely independent off, Barbara Stanwyck was one of Hollywood's most respected actresses.
Joan Leslie.
Oh, darn. Well, maybe it's for the best. Can I tell my husband it's all over between us?
I think so.
But one chapter of her life was steeped in sadness and secrecy. Her estrangement from her adopted son, Dion Anthony Fay. In 1932, Stanwyck and her first husband, actor Frank Fay, adopted an infant boy, hoping to cement their shaky marriage. The marriage failed, and Stanwyck gained sole custody of young Dion. As a single mother dedicated to her career, Stanwyck was strict and demanding. She truly tried to be a good mother, but by the time Dion reached his teens, their relationship had soured. Reports say he struggled with behavioral issues and perhaps felt overshadowed by Stanwyck's fame. By the 1950s, mother and son were essentially estranged. Stanwyck rarely spoke of him publicly. Gossip columnists only occasionally mentioned Dion's teenage troubles or run-ins with the law. In a 1960 interview, Stanwyck flatly said, "I have no son," cutting off inquiries. Hollywood largely kept mum, respecting Stanwyck's privacy, and perhaps intimidated by her no-nonsense persona.
What were you doing up the Amazon?
Looking for snakes. I'm an ophiologist.
I thought you were in the beer business.
Beer? Ale?
What's the difference?
Between beer and ale?
Yes.
Dion drifted aimlessly, and he alleged that Barbara had disowned him for being gay, though evidence for that is scant beyond hearsay. In truth, they had been distant long before, likely due to clashing temperaments. When Barbara Stanwyck died in 1990, It came to light she left Dion a mere $5,000 out of her large estate. It was effectively a token to avoid legal contest, while her fortune went to charities and a few close friends. This final act confirmed how complete their rift was. Yet Stanwyck had never aired any dirty laundry about it. She kept a tight lid on her personal life. The press, in turn, admired her enough to rarely pry. Thus, the tragic distance between Stanwyck and her only child remained a largely untold story during her lifetime. Only later biographies highlighted how this estrangement pained her. One writer noted the child resembled her in just one respect. Both were, effectively, orphans. It's a subdued Hollywood secret, lacking the fireworks of scandal. More a slow, quiet heartache that one of cinema's strongest women carried alone, never letting the public see the cracks in her armor. Gary Cooper and Patricia Neal's Secret Love and Remedy by Abortion. Screen icon. Gary Cooper was the all-American male ideal. Tall, stoic, and married to socialite Veronica "Rocky" Cooper. But in the late 1940s, the married middle-aged Cooper began a passionate affair with a rising young actress, Patricia Neal, 25 years his junior. They met filming The Fountainhead and fell deeply in love.
Destroyed by a world where you have no chance.
Why are you afraid?
I know what they'll do to you. You had the genius that made the Enright House.
For Patricia Neal, it was her first real romance. For Cooper, it was a midlife infatuation that made him contemplate leaving his wife and children. The affair was kept out of the papers, thanks to studio interventions and the discretion of the press in that era. However, in 1950, Neal became pregnant with Cooper's child, a potentially explosive development. According to Neal's autobiography, Cooper panicked at the prospect of their secret coming out and insisted she have an abortion. At the time, abortion was illegal and highly dangerous, but Gary arranged everything. Neal later expressed bitter regret over this, saying it was the one thing she wished she hadn't done. Cooper confided the situation to his wife at some point. Rocky Cooper confronted Neal in a parking lot, telling her, "If you have this baby, I will ruin you."
It cannot be subordinated to the needs, opinions, or wishes of others. It is not an object of sacrifice.
Neal felt she had no choice. The procedure was done quietly, and Neal never bore children in her later marriage, which she believed might have been due to complications from this abortion. The emotional fallout was immense. Cooper, racked with guilt, ultimately ended the affair and returned to the fold of his family. He even had a religious reawakening and confessed his sins to a priest. Neal, heartbroken, suffered a nervous breakdown and fled Hollywood for Broadway for several years. This entire saga was hidden from the public until many years later. At the time, the fan magazines only hinted that Pat Neal was a homewrecker, which hurt her reputation, but the full truth was kept secret. Only in the 1980s did Neal speak openly about it, by which point Cooper had died. The Cooper-Neal affair remains one of Hollywood's classic clandestine love stories. Two big stars, a pregnancy taken care of in secret, and a lot of lingering sorrow. It shows the extremes to which actors went to avoid scandal in that era, even at great personal cost. Leslie Howard's illegitimate daughter lost to history. During the 1930s, English actor Leslie Howard was the epitome of refined gentility on screen. But he, too, harbored a secret that only emerged much later. Howard reportedly fathered a child out of wedlock with a young protege.
Escape too. I'm so very tired of it all. I've struggled for food and for money. I've weeded and hoed and picked cotton till I can't stand it another minute.
In 1924, an ambitious teenager named Roisin Marcus became involved with Howard. She gave birth to a daughter, Carol, that year. For the sake of propriety, Howard and his wife relayed that the baby was not his, effectively erasing himself from Carol's life. However, industry insiders suspected the truth. Carol Marcus grew up to be a vibrant figure in her own right. Throughout her life, rumors swirled that she was Leslie Howard's daughter. Howard never publicly acknowledged Carol. In fact, when asked about extramarital affairs, he remained coy. It wasn't until biographers dug into Howard's letters and Roisin's accounts that they confirmed Leslie Howard reportedly fathered a daughter by Roisin Marcus in 1924. The secret was kept remarkably well during Howard's lifetime. The press and public had no inkling that the distinguished actor had a love child in America.
Well, isn't it enough that you've gathered every other man's heart today? You've always had mine. You've got your teeth on it.
Oh, don't tease me now. Have I your heart, my darling? I love...
It helps that Howard spent much of his time in England, while Carol was raised in New York. Carol herself only learned of the possibility in adulthood and spoke about it lightly, saying she could neither confirm nor deny Howard's paternity. She did possess a striking resemblance to him. Sadly, Leslie Howard died in 1943 when his plane was shot down in World War II, taking any chance of a resolution with him. Carol Marcus Matthau went on to become a Hollywood writer and socialite, but the mystery of her birth lingered as an anecdotal footnote. Among Hollywood's family secrets, this one is less scandalous perhaps, but poignant. A distinguished actor with a secret child he never claimed, likely due to the rigid moral climate of his time. It reminds us that for every explosive scandal that made headlines, there were quieter secrets, like Carol's parentage, that remained in the shadows, known only to a few, and only fully revealed long after those involved were gone.